Michael Schutzler, CEO of the Washington Tech Industry Association. I'm super passionate about this topic because I was really lucky. I was 27 years old and I got my very first management job. I was an engineer, and then I got accidentally promoted to a program manager. And I suddenly had half a dozen people working for me. And so I got to see payroll. I saw something really bizarre. 5 of them were men, 1 woman. And the woman and her exact coworker next to her were both engineers, went to the same school, were the same age, had been working for the same company, my company, for the same period of time. Now, this is a long time ago. This is like 1987. So these people were identical in every way except gender, and there was a $35,000 salary and a $30,000 salary. So I fixed it. And I thought that would be it. And I've been doing it the same thing over and over and over again in my career, now for 30 years. So this topic pisses me off.
Well, my name's Michaela Kiner. I'm the founder of Uniquely HR, and prior to that, I spent 15 years in HR, mostly large companies, Microsoft and Amazon. I did a blip at Starbucks and then went on to a couple of smaller companies before going out on my own. As we were having our prep call and kind of having this conversation, Michael talked about his role and his experiences with gender pay equity in particular, and I went next and I was like, well, I'm part of that statistic, right? When we talk about gender pay equity in particular, and women make X percent on the dollar. So having lived and experienced that, but also having been really naive to that fact until probably not all that long ago. The first big job that I took out of graduate school was at Microsoft, and fortunately 2 years in, I got a new manager who was an amazing manager and advocate. And after a little while, he sat me down and he just looked at me and said, "Why did you come here at the salary that you did?" And I was like, I don't know. They offered me a salary and I took it. I just really didn't know any better. But then that translated into my future experiences with large employers, and also seeing the inequities and being alongside the decision makers when going through promotions and merit increases and market adjustments and all of these things, and also having to continuously advocate both for women and other underrepresented groups.
Wow. My name is Carolina. I work at a company called Avanade, which is an Accenture company. I was born and raised in Mexico, where you go and meet somebody, you shake hands, and you say, "Oh, what's your name? Oh, what do you do?" "Well, I'm an engineer." "Oh, how much you make?" I'm not kidding. That is just part of a normal conversation, and salaries are so transparent that there is no way for these, disparities in salary for people are even a thing, because salaries are pretty set for the job, for the level. I moved here in my mid-20s, and I found out that, you don't talk about that here. It's like, why? What is there to hide? And then it hit me. Oh, not everybody gets paid the same, so that's why they don't talk about it. And where, I'm not here to say we all should be talking about our salaries. It's a huge cultural change, and I'm fighting for people to know how to know their worth, how to know what they should be making, what a position should be making, and also for leaders to know, hey, it's not okay to pay somebody less because they didn't ask for more. The more aware that we are of the tools that are out there, the more that we are informed, I think the better we'll do, fighting for that equality.
So many of you are probably aware of the statistic, but in the U.S., for every dollar that a man makes, a woman makes 78 cents. Why?
Do you notice she looked right at me? There's a fabric we have in this country that's quite unique. It's I. And because we have an I culture here, then the individual matters more in many ways than the collective. it is a norm that it is your right and it's your obligation to negotiate on your behalf. But most girls in our society are raised to be polite, and the boys are being raised to be tough, rough, aggressive. And so the entire posture in a negotiation is different between those genders, just because of the system. Like, that's, your parents are teaching you that, your teachers are teaching you that, everything in the entire social structure is teaching you that. And then there's one other aspect here that's just a biological fact. Men don't have babies.
Yeah.
So there is an organizational discount that I've seen created over and over again. So a woman's going to go away and she's going to give birth. And so she's going to disappear from work for a period of time. And if she's a healthy human being, she's going to spend a reasonable period of time with that child after it's born. So she's not going to be gone for, 24 hours to have a baby and come back. She's
I like
gonna
the
be
sound
gone.
effect.
You like that? She's going to do some work. So you've got a whole bunch of factors like that line up where everything else would be, reasonably equal. That's not.
There are a couple of things that really come to mind for me. The first, as Michael said, it really just is upbringing, and then I think about the value that's placed on the work that's predominantly done by women versus men. A lot of caretaking jobs, teaching, nursing, social work, etc. And the sad fact is that when more men move into those career fields, it doesn't help, right? So the women never rise to the top. And I mean, I have a personal example with Michael and I were just talking about executive coaching. And coaching is a well-paying job. There are fewer men in executive coaching. And what I found really interesting is that most of the men I've met who are executive coaches command a higher wage than the women. So even though you have a field that's predominantly female, somehow the men manage to make more, and then in fields that are predominantly male, the men seem to make more, right? So it's a little bit confusing for me, but that's typically the way it's played out. The other thing, that's such a what do we call it, a double bind, is originally we realized, okay, women don't negotiate. We need to teach women to negotiate, and I fully agree with that. And it's great for us to learn negotiation skills, but then you see that women are not viewed as favorably when we negotiate, or so the double bind is we lose if we don't negotiate. We also lose if we negotiate like men because we don't get perceived favorably. And I'm such a fan of this one phrase from Jonathan Spossato's book, Better Together, and his phrase was "listen louder," which is, if you think about the dynamic I just explained in negotiation, not only do we as women need to learn to negotiate, men or even women on the other side of that negotiation also need to listen carefully and make sure that they're not maintaining a bias against women when we negotiate.
I do believe that in order for us to be more successful at negotiating, at getting what we want, we also need to make sure that we are empowering each other, consulting, other people, talking to your network. It is very important to get informed so you know what you want. And I think that one way of doing it is through our network and our support groups and the people that are there that you think that may help.
Our industry is an issue that the unions are grappling with themselves. Everyone's aware of it. The data is clear. It's all stupid, and yet it's structural, right? So we have structural issues here that sometimes are just like right in front of our faces, and we don't even realize it.
It's always done this way, That's
exactly.
Well, so how should recruiters be asking the comp question? What can they do to impact this? Carolina?
The conversation has to happen early because you don't want to waste each other's time. From the recruiter point of view, they want to pay you the least they can to save as much money as they can because they're just, to the company, this conduit, right? I think, to me, the wise way would be for the candidate to speak about what they would like to make. as to not influence what the offer would be. And at that point, then maybe the recruiter should say, whoa, you're way over what we have, and that's okay. It is more important to know what you are looking to make rather than what you're making. That would be the approach that I would propose, yeah.
I always thought as a recruiter, I don't want pay to be a distraction for the person. That was kind of, maybe that wasn't as good as high a bar as it could have been, but it was like you should feel really good about what you're getting paid, because once you come to work here, it's going to be pretty hard work, right? I don't want you thinking you should have negotiated for more compensation. It's really interesting for me as a business owner because I have to watch revenue, and we look at sales and revenue not daily. I've also seen a pattern, especially with some of our consultants, where women will be generous, or they'll say, I'll take that, like if that assignment pays less. So we've had to be intentional to say, no, we want to pay you a fair wage, and we want to pay you, as much as the qualified male consultants who are demanding a fair wage. That's probably unique in a way. I mean, a lot of large organizations probably wouldn't do that, but I hope everyone in this room who has the opportunity will do that and take those steps.
In the state of Washington, it is illegal for an employer to ask you what you make. We fought for 4 years to get that law passed, which just happened in April of this year. So you cannot do that as an employer. It's a new law. It literally happened in April. So it's the larger companies are learning it faster for obvious reasons. Know that and tell your friends and spread the word.
So at my company, and I know a lot of folks in this room, we work at startups. And guess what? Startups are notorious for saying things like, well, we don't care what level they are, we just need smart people. Well, we're pretty flexible. We could hire a senior person or a junior person. And how do you handle a comp situation like that? So I'm going to answer my own question because we recruit a lot for startups. So what I will typically do is say, we have budgeted for X, but we're super flexible on the level of person that we need, and the interview process will help inform us, what do you think? And you just kind of leave it open. Most people are pretty understanding that if they're going to go work for a startup, they know that it changes, it's all over the place, strategy might be this, strategy might be that. So usually they won't be talking to a recruiter about going to work for a startup if they don't understand that. So there's generally some level of tolerance for the ambiguity of it. Okay, so let's assume that for the leaders of the room, we walk into a company, we get the comp spreadsheet, and we look at it, and we go, what do we do? It doesn't look good. What should we as leaders do when we're in that situation? Carolina.
Hiring managers should be able to hear you, to hear feedback, and for you to be empowered because of your knowledge, your experience, to say, you know what, this is effed up. This is not going to fly, and not in this market. You have that knowledge. Yeah.
I mean, one advantage of being in larger companies is that there are teams of people who do this for you periodically, or especially at performance review time, where they're actually looking at teams at ranges and levels, and they're scrubbing for gender inequities or race, ethnicity, and I would give credit to some of the large organizations I worked with where they would come back and point out, there's room to correct some things if you feel that it warrants correction. In a smaller organization, I believe it's a little bit harder because there are some things that we can just see by eyeballing. And I've been in those situations as well where you work with leaders and just say, is this person lagging or does this person require a correction? And I've seen those corrections happen for both men and women because sometimes it's race or gender that's driving inequity. Sometimes it's tenure, right? Because the market is moving faster than tenured employees. But I love to have someone backing me up and doing a process that's a little bit more analytical than what I can do on my own.
If you have 2 people working for you or more, it's your job. Fix it. I can tell you from 30 years of experience, You don't actually have to get permission. In fact, you're going to get the opposite of pushback. You're going to get people going like, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize that." Like, people are not paying attention to this. So let me give you an example of how I know that 100% for sure, not just from me. So CEO Salesforce. So he figured out that there was a gender pay equity problem because everybody's yelling at him. But he had no data. So they did an audit. And they figured out that there was a massive gender pay equity problem inside of Salesforce. So, as the CEO, he said, fix it. He made everybody fix it all at once. A year later, they did another audit just to see and make sure things were still okay. They had a gender pay equity problem again a year later. Right, so it's systemic, people. And it really is, even if you have a CEO that's driving this and really believes it's the right thing to do, it's really your job. You, as the hiring manager with 2 or more employees, either you fix it or it's not going to get fixed.
And what if you're a new HR generalist coming into the organization and you've got a bunch of executives at the top. You're a new hire. You're nervous.
So you can point to Michael, or yeah. I mean, in HR as a support role, I said it the other day, and I hate that term, but we are a cost center still. I think support role. Find your advocates and allies, right? If you can figure out who on that leadership or executive team wants to help you do the right thing, is in your corner, not just on this issue, but on each and every issue that you come across.
Well, one of the things that I think I at the beginning said, reach out, never be afraid to ask. If you're in that position, you feel like you're junior, you don't have quite a voice, there is somebody that in between that can help you amplify your voice. It can be a coworker, it can be somebody outside. Just by you being here and working to build that network, you are doing more than the average person. You have plenty of professionals that they can help, with that. It comes to having those difficult conversations. We are just terrified of having them. I think that in order to have them, you need to be very, very well prepared. You need to do your research. I mean, why are you asking for a raise? Let's just say, why? Let's start there. Is it because you found out that somebody else makes more than you for the same job? Is it because you've heard that in other companies, that's the standard? You think that you are doing more than what your job title, requires you to do? There are so many factors that can require for you to ask for a raise. But I think that the main thing here, before you even consider it, is yes, go ask yourself why. Why are you not happy with that? And arm yourself. Remember to keep track of your achievements. Do some research what the market is paying for your role. There are many tools out there. There's, Glassdoor, Salary.com, and know what your worth is before you go to talk about it. If you arm yourself with knowledge about yourself, your skills, what the market pays, and the value that you bring to the company, I think you'll have a better case.
Happened to be having a chat with a colleague about a year ago, and one of her goals, she's actually said, well, everything I asked for in the last year, and she was an entrepreneur, so she said, every time I asked for help, everyone said yes, so I must not be asking enough. And I was like, I like that attitude, and I made a commitment then, to ask for some things that I considered favors. Probably a normal person wouldn't think it was a favor, but I thought, these are big favors, and I'm going to get ready, and I'm going to, make these requests. And then when you come to pay, which is so tied into our identity and our emotion and our value, it's even harder.
She's asking me how to prepare for it. And I said, what are you worth? She said, well, I don't know. How am I supposed to figure that out? I said, I learned something really valuable when I was your age. You're only as good as your last job offer. And I said, when's the last time you talked to a recruiter? I haven't. Then how the hell do you know what you're worth? So just go talk to some recruiters. Like they're bugging you on LinkedIn anyway, right? So just answer one and say, yeah, I would like to do an exploratory. And so she did. She really was really
one little thing that I should mention is practice. Practice it in the mirror, in front of your SO. Practice it, practice it, practice it. You're not in sales, but you are selling.
The biggest issue for a large employer on a topic like this is where's the onus of responsibility? And what is the definition of equity? So when you're looking at gender pay equity, you have to normalize for a number of things. And the debate is, what are you normalizing on? So is a PhD versus a bachelor's degree versus a high school degree, is that equivalent? Or is there some differential allowed for that? Is 10 years of experience different than 1 year of experience? And so how do you start to define that? So much of the debate and the argument for the years was principally about what's that structure. And that's actually in the law now. There's a whole bunch of mechanisms that say, here's what it is that's fair and reasonable to use as a mechanism for normalizing what the gender pay delta is. So that was one huge issue that kept going on.
It's a cultural change. With any cultural change, things don't happen overnight. I believe that we definitely need to start speaking about it, just like this. It needs to become a theme, and it needs to go into that culture shift. Just like, like I said, like how you do, how much you make. We can't just do that. We can't just shift culture like that, but you can push towards it.
Has anyone listened to the KUOW podcast, Battle Tactics for Your Sexist Workplace?
Yes.
Yeah, it addresses every issue we've talked about tonight and many more in a very, fun and grounded and hey, if you're not sure, if you're making enough, go ask the guy who works at the desk next to you, right? And it is truly tactics, really easy to apply, just tips and tools. I would highly encourage you, if you haven't, check it out. And I believe it was the first episode was on pay equity.
The best advice anyone ever gave me is to ask and then shut up. You have to practice, like what Carolina was saying. I'm here today because I want to ask for a raise of X. I'm asking for that because I did this, I did that, I did this. This saved the company this much money. This grew this achieved that. And then stop talking. Do not feel obligated to keep talking. It's okay if the person on the other side of the table feels uncomfortable. You are not obligated to answer your own question. That's the best advice I ever got.